still would be able to live within a year, which is actually a pretty short amount of time if you really think about it. And you're depriving them of the opportunity to live, which is the same thing as killing a child, and that's extremely immoral. It's even worse than killing an adult, you could say, because they haven't been able to experience life. And it takes so many years to fully develop that if we just allow anyone over the age of 18 to do it, a lot of people who aren't necessarily making the best decisions will decide to have an abortion and regret it later on in life.
Okay. My position is that the pro-choice view defends fundamental rights for women and their bodies as well as other people who are able to have children. I think it's a good or even necessary position. The evidence that could justify overriding a mother's bodily autonomy is super minimal for a fetus. It isn't immoral to let women and people with a uterus have a right to make choices for their bodies. The principles to women's body should be protected instead of the rights of an unconscious clump of cells.
Um, so I think it is important to protect the rights of the parent, but at the same time, protecting the rights isn't as important as protecting a life in some cases, and especially in a case like this, because it would kind of go against your rights to be forcibly locked up and controlled by the government, which is basically what prison is. That's an example of you doing crime, and so your rights are being taken away as a result. And although it's not the exact same thing, the point is that in certain situations, your rights need to be taken for the greater good. And especially now when something as immoral as killing a child before it has the opportunity to experience life is, being discussed. Because up to the ages, because it takes a while before your brain's fully developed. Your brain's developing a lot up to 22 years. Because that's the third stage of brain development, 7 to 22 years. So you probably aren't making a good decision in the first place, and making a bad and immoral decision at the same time is like not. Even if you have the right to do it, you shouldn't be able to do it.
You seem to be arguing for potentiality of a life because it's not a life yet. Correct me if I'm wrong on what I think you seem to be arguing for, but at any point between a potential father and a potential mother it can be called for potentiality. So even if a guy and a girl aren't having sex, you could say, well, they're not bringing another life into the world, even though they have the chance to. So you could say they're blocking someone from living. So if you're going to argue for potentiality, you might as well extend it to cases like that too. Because there's always potential for another life to be made.
Well, yeah, there's potential there, but it's not already in the process. The sperm haven't already touched the embryos in the woman. It's not. The child isn't already, developing, which is completely different. It's different if you haven't started. It hasn't started developing yet. That's why I'm talking about potentiality. Because in that situation, you could argue that it's not alive, but you should think of it as being alive because it's going to be live extremely soon.
Well, I only think it matters to talk about it in that way up to 24 to 28 weeks, maybe 29 to 30 weeks, because that's the point where the fetus starts to become conscious. But anytime before that, it's just cells, so it's not alive. So I would say, sure, it is part of the process, but it's as equal a part of a process as before people have sex, because there isn't a life there until, like I said, 24, 28 weeks.
All right. But if you agree for abortion, that means that it would still be legal after 20 22, 24 weeks, which what you said would be
Mm.
when it's, conscious, which means you would still be depriving a baby that is conscious of what, according to you, of course, of its life, which is still fundamentally immoral. And there's no real way to justify that. You can't really justify taking away a life, especially a life something as young as 22 to 24 weeks.
Oh, I didn't say that. I think their pro-choice position can fit within the 24 to 28 weeks, especially because a very small percentage of abortions right now are late term anyway. So when most people talk about pro-choice and abortion, they mean pretty early on.
Okay, so like a lot of abortions happen like every year. It's been lowering in recent history due to, states not liking abortion. But in 2017, around 862,000 people, 1,000 abortions were had. And if we assume each of those was a life, that's 862,000 people, which could have been born, but instead were actually killed. And that is like a extremely large amount of people. That's enough for a whole entire bio attack. A terrorist attacks over a year wouldn't equal to that amount of people. That's an insane amount of people. And to say that that is completely fine just because of something as just because of rights, like justifying the death of close to a million people over rights is not necessarily uh, very good.
Again, because it's not a person yet, it's not conscious, so it's not really a death. And also, if you could say that so many people don't have sex and so many people take birth control or so many people use like other forms of contraception, they're also not having babies. They're also like quote unquote killing potential lives, probably even more than are killed by abortion.
Boy.
But we don't limit that.
All right. Well, it's also a bad decision, or usually it's a bad decision made by someone who's extremely young, because patients aged 20 to 24 obtain 34% of all abortions. So that means that people between the ages of 20 and 24, which are young, extremely young adults, actually, you could say, um, they're the ones getting like 34% of all abortions, which is an extremely large amount. And that is a large decision, especially make when you're relatively young. And that's not to say they can't make their own decisions. They're obviously adults at this point, but still they are pretty young. So for them to be able to make a decision that, big for themselves, because sometimes during a surgery with abortion, things will go wrong and you might not be able to have another kid again or something of sort like that, or it can cause unnecessary drama around their house or family. So to allow people that young to
Hmm.
potentially ruin their lives is very bad.
Do you have like a source for that 34-30 statistic?
That is from Guttmacher. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Guttmacher Institute. Yeah, it's from Guttmacher Institute. I can send the link.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah, I'll send the link in debate chat. I didn't forgot to mention these are stats for the United States specifically, not just every country in the world, obviously. But yeah,
Okay. Well, this is like good. I just wanted to check. So we find, yeah. So even if, like, as this shows, a lot of the people who got abortions were pretty young. Um, having a kid and keeping the kid could ruin both the parent's life and the child's life. So a lot of people have abortions because they're not financially ready or not emotionally ready. And you can say adoption, but the adoption system can be very slow and pretty expensive. And sometimes it like puts kids in pretty bad foster homes. So like um having this kid could like they could grow up being neglected. They could grow up, with not a lot to eat on the table or with a really like rough and poor beginning. And this could potentially cause like mental trauma to the child or just a lot of like emotional damage. So you could ruin the child's life and also your life by holding off on things such as college and not becoming more of a developed person ready to have a child yet.
All right. So we're assuming that they come from bad neighborhoods, and just bad circumstances around being born, which is why they wanted to be aborted, right?
Yeah, or
So,
maybe like a parent who like doesn't know how to parent.
okay. Yeah, I'm sure you've heard of many success stories, or maybe just a few, but there's success stories like Tupac. Tupac came out of the hood and he made it out with rapping. Now, this isn't specifically an example about abortion or anything, but he came from an extremely bad neighborhood. And he managed to make it to the point where he inspires millions with his music. Even though he's still dead, he inspires millions to this day with his songs. And, he's still regarded as one of the greats of rap. And he came from the hood. So there's always a chance that a person coming from the hood may do something much greater than someone who even came from a normal, good middle class family. So to go off the assumption that just because they're in a bad neighborhood, they might not come up and they might not do well. It's gonna make sure that all the significant people who could possibly do well don't even exist. Barack Obama
Oh,
probably,
sure,
like a lot
there's
of
a
people, wouldn't
chance.
exist.
But I
Tupac
think that's
wouldn't
an
exist.
outlier. It's just
Yeah,
like an antidote.
yeah, it's an outlier. But when you're when you're thinking about a country with millions, billions of people, actually, then the outlier, even if it's only 1%, even if it's only half of a percent, even that half of a percent will still be worth millions or hundreds of thousands or, you know, a lot of people. And so you got to account for that. You can't just take them out of the equation completely because they might contribute more than even a lot more other people who are
I
normal.
don't see how. Sorry. I feel like to say 1 or like a half percent, you would need an actual stat on people coming from bad neighborhoods. But like things like bad neighborhoods and being poor are actually factors of trauma to a child. And the less they call these things resilience factors, like a lot of therapists and psychologists call them that. Like having a support system around you or having, a good being financially stable, and these help protect against developing trauma. So I would like go more on the side of a professional opinion than an outlier or like an antidote. I think even if it is a bad decision to have an abortion, um people already make bad decisions all the time, but we don't limit their right to do that. And isn't we don't call it immoral to limit their right to do that because everyone has to go through life, making mistakes and messing up sometimes.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. Although at this point we're considering, well, okay, I'm not gonna call it murder because like you said multiple times that the child technically aren't alive yet because they haven't, developed consciousness or anything like that. But to pretty much make sure something doesn't get conscious at all, like don't give take away the chance for something to be conscious. That's an example of a bad decision you shouldn't make. It's like you can compare it to murder, although it's obviously a little bit lower, but it's still a bad act, just like stealing, theft of certain cases, of course, can get you killed. It's a bad decision, and it's not like we should just say, "Hey, we should let them do that." Everybody makes bad decisions. You gotta stop some bad decisions. If you don't stop some people from doing bad decisions, then a lot of America would be dead right now, and I mean a lot.
but it isn't like um it's not like people are going to have a million abortions throughout their life. And it could be a good decision for many people too. Like it could like having an abortion could help people um finish college, or could help people like have an easier relationship with their partner due to less stress and not being ready yet. It could help avoid potential death of the mother or medical issues, because having birth can be very stressful on the body and very like damaging.
There's some cases where some people are like, when you have a child, things change for you. And I think that's somewhat true. Because after you have a child, sometimes you become more responsible because now you're responsible for another person. Because a lot of time when you're doing something and you do it for yourself, you're like, whatever, who cares? But if you're doing something for someone else, you're gonna have to put a lot more thought into it, especially if it's a child. So even let's say you don't work very hard, you don't like working hard, you're not a hardworking person. If you have a
Mhm.
child, in some cases, you may start to work harder because you don't like seeing that child that you're responsible for go hungry. And that happens a lot. Even because if you have a child, you're gonna feel a connection to it. You're gonna want for it to live a good life. In most cases, sometimes you don't, but in most cases, you feel a kind of parent to child bond, and you don't want to see your child just suffering. So if that means you have to work harder, then you're gonna work harder, and you can still get through college and such. Maybe a little more stressful, but you can get through college and such with a child. I know because I was raised by a single mom, and she was able to do
That
that. So
I
like,
mean,
you can.
sorry. Go on.
Oh, go on.
I think the single mom thing is also an antidote. And sure, maybe some people, their habits will change and their work ethic might change when having a kid, but it still can be way too risky to put a potential life to. Like, for example, I grew up with a single father who wasn't really ready to have a kid yet, and I have a lot of like mental stuff going on and a lot of like unfortunate things in my life. So like I could be an opposing antidote to yours.
Yeah, all right. Oh, that's hard to combat. But shit, I'm fucked. All right. It can be risky, but pretty much everything has risk. Every step you take, you have a small chance of falling and breaking your neck. Like nothing is truly without chance. You could, because a fucking meteor could come from space and collide into Earth for reasons we don't know why, for a certain chance. Like nothing is without risk. So if we're going strictly by risk, then sex itself wouldn't necessarily be the best because there's a lot of chances of contraceptives not working, protection breaking, uh, STDs. So if we're going by risk, sex itself isn't something people should be doing. And so same with abortion. It's
I
also
mean,
risky.
sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
You need to think about not just the chance of a bad thing happening, but also how bad the thing is. So, like, for example, the risk of having sex could be, like you said, having a kid, but that kid isn't conscious yet. The risk of not aborting a child and raising them could be the child ending up with a lot of mental illnesses, or bad things happening to them, or ending up as an orphan, very potentially. Like those could also be very, very bad things that people could avoid through access to abortion.
Okay, yeah, but we're living in a time where like mental health is cared about a lot. If you tell someone you have there's like even on Discord, there's mental health servers everywhere. So yes, they may be scarred, they may get mental health issues, something like that. But those things, even though it's not easy, they can definitely be overcome. Like now is a time where people are moving forward and caring about each other a lot more. The social justice movement is kicking off. You know, people are caring about each other a lot more. So if you need help, then you can go ask for help or therapy or something like that. There's people helping that. There's donations, everything. So
But
you
a lot
can
of it
move
costs
forward.
money, and we don't have like Medicare for all yet in America.
In America. Damn America. Anyways, uh okay. So yeah, it costs money, but once again, they're also like you can also talk to friends. Some even though it's not like professional and sometimes it might not do the best, but there are a lot of times when friends can help out a lot. Like there are cases of friends helping out more than literal just fucking therapy can. So it's not just money. If you need help, you can ask your friends for help. You can ask well, let's say your parents inflicted harm, you can't ask your parents, but still there are people you can talk to. There's other adults around, there's other anything. If you have an electronic, which pretty much almost everyone does, even a lot of lower class families, even they have electronics. You can talk to people online; they can help you out because there are a lot of therapists online who actually do that for free because they just feel like helping people or people who like being supportive.
Right. So, like, in regards to like friends, how do you know these friends don't have their own mental issues, and how do you know they have the emotional bandwidth to handle your child's mental issues, or that they also like they could also come from a very bad background and not be able to help, and or the child like could have social anxiety or a disorder that like makes it difficult for them to socialize. So it's hard for them to make friends and they would end up feeling very alone. I think even if we account for the potential of the kid having a good life, I guess, or something like that, can I give you like a thought experiment?
Sure, I'm fine with that. Fuck, why not?
So let's say you're like a human, right? And you have this let me think. How to think of phrasing this. Like, have you heard of the violinist argument
No, I have not.
by Judith Jarvis Thompson? Well, basically, it
Uh,
implies that like, let's say you're like in the hospital, and then there is this violin player plugged to you, like you're both plugged into each other, and um in order to set yourself free from that hospital bed and staying there forever, you need to unplug yourself. But this would also kill the person sitting next to you in said hospital. And the point of the argument is that even with equal levels of consciousness and everything, and them both being adults and already having a life ahead of them, or life already lived, that the person who is changed shouldn't have to keep carrying around or living with this other person next to them because it's sacrificing their autonomy in their own life. Like it's about the right to your own life over like and your own like body over someone else's.
yeah, but also after well, your kid will go off on its own. Or if you do decent in parenting, even if you don't do decent, they will go off on their own. It's just you just decide if they have problems when they're on their own. Because once they get to a certain age, they're probably going to leave you behind. Or before that, they might even run away from you. Who knows? But the point is that you will be autonomous once again. It's not like a done deal. It's not the rest of your life is going to be forever chained to your child. No, you can still go do things. You can go to a party once your kid's old enough, or you could ask a friend to take care of your kid. You could drop them off at a daycare, or if you don't have money for a daycare, just ask a friend, hire a cheap babysitter, something of the sort. It's not completely giving up your autonomy forever for the child.
No, but it's for a very long time, and it's hard to trust, daycare centers and babysitters because a lot of them like can be predators or abusive to the kid. And even after like a child leaves the nest, I guess the parents have to deal with probably some depression and feeling alone due to their kid leaving, and they have to go to work, and a lot of times the parents are going to be a little bit older, so they have a lot less of a chance to have a life of their own due to being elderly. And they probably don't have many finances due to possibly saving up for college for their children or things like that.
All right. So yeah, that's that's true. They might not have money due to saving up for their child, but there are a lot of things you can do without money that are pretty well. Or you can like take some time and invest a lot of cash into it in one point, and then you'll be able to do that for a while. Gaming is a perfect example of that. You invest a good amount of money into a PC, and you can run that stuff for like next year or two, more than a year or two actually, and you'll have a hobby that you can go back to and do whatever you want to on. And you can use it as just like a relief to get away from, whatever stress or whatever you're feeling from your child, and feel somewhat autonomous on your own as well. Because I know in my case, if my brother, who's like 8, he's like 8 or 7, he doesn't really bother me. You give him something like a tablet or like a computer, something to just watch YouTube, chill on, and he'll sit down and he'll be there for the next few hours and he won't really bother you other than to tell you to make him a sandwich. So in cases like that, you have your own free time, or yeah, you have your own free time to do whatever you need to or whatever you want to. It's just you can't really go too far. And it's not that big of a constraint because there's a lot of things you can do in the vicinity of like your house or in your house.
Well, work life gets in the way of this. And also, like, a lot of people just don't want to be a parent. Or, like, I don't see why it's immoral for someone to make the decision to carry around a child to term and then take care of it and take care of it. But I mean, yeah, because it's sacrificing their own life. It's sacrificing their, personal space, I guess. And potentially even like their health. Like, why does the health and the rights of a already formed human being supersede the rights of like a fetus? I don't see it.
Uh, I'd say, I'd say the rights of the. I'm not saying that the rights of the fetus supersede the rights of like fully formed human. I'm saying that there should be actually be some rights for the unborn fetus because pretty much everyone's just writing it off as yeah, you don't want to sacrifice or you shouldn't have sacrifice for it because it's not even live, which is not giving it the rights to have life just because it's gonna, cause problems for someone else, and not giving it the right to ever experience anything because it's not gonna be able to live because hey, it's inconvenient for someone else. A lot of things are going to be inconvenient. If you spend a lot of time in school, you spend a good portion of your life in school. You go from, at least in the American school system, you go from like kindergarten to middle school to high school and then to college. And that's a good portion of the beginning of your life. gone to school. But we don't say,
But
"Oh, well,
sorry.
I'm not going to school." Everyone well, some people do, but most people understand you gotta go to school, you gotta sacrifice some time to go to school because it gives you something out of it. It gives you
Mhm.
something out of it that you can use to enrich your life afterwards, which is the same with the child. In most cases, or in some cases, uh, once your child's grown up and he's gone, if you took care of your child, he might take care of you back. So it's an investment in a way because
I
that
don't
will
think
eventually return to you.
sorry.
Go on.
I don't think it's not just an inconvenience. It's something literally invading your body. Like for example, rape is another thing that, takes over people's bodily autonomy and violates it. And that's for a shorter amount of time than a pregnancy. So like, obviously rape is immoral. I think we can both concede on that. So why is something else um that overrides and invades someone's bodily autonomy, like, why should stopping that be immoral? I'm not saying they're the same thing. I'm just saying they're similar, but not like obviously they're not like the same in terms of severity.
Yeah, they're definitely not the same in terms of severity, but your autonomy is going to be taken away due to a ton of different things. You could say your autonomy is taken away in school because if you don't do something a certain way, you'll probably be kicked out. And especially if you're like the child or you're below, college or high school, your parents will take your stuff away and make you do something. You know, that's an example of having your physical autonomy taken away. Yet that's completely fine because it's not really that severe. Yeah, I understand that it's not severe, so I'm not going to say it's as severe as fucking pregnancy or rape. I'm not going to, make that claim because that's fucking bold. But at the same time, still having your autonomy taken, yet it's completely allowed. A lot of people will agree that
Mm,
you need to take your child's things to teach them a lesson. Sometimes you need your autonomy taken, and it's just going to happen over the course of life.
I think that's disanalogous because with pregnancy, something's literally physically invading the inside of your body. But a parent, grounding their kid, for example, or making them go to school or sending a kid to detention is just an outside circumstance that's, maybe invading the kid's time or a bit of the kid's like freedom, but they still have their body there. They still have themselves. But with pregnancy, you literally give up a part of yourself to something else.
I'd argue it's more about the mental than it is for the physically, because even because your body can be because when your body isn't autonomous, that's pretty bad. But honestly, if you had everything taken from you and had to like stare at a fucking corner for the rest of the day, that'd be worse. Like I'd rather not be able to go somewhere and not be able to, you know, do something with my body than just not be able to think a certain way or entertain myself or something that has more of a mental effect. Because it's when you're having a
But
child, it's more
sorry.
just a little bit pain. It's more painful than anything, and it's going to take a lot of time and stress. But it's not going to just straight up ruin you in most cases. A normal birth, like normal birth, it will just come out and you'll have a little bit of stress and stuff because you don't know how to be a new parent or whatever. But you'll eventually get used to it.
But the physical affects the mental, right? Because there's lots of hormones going on when you're pregnant. There's lots of like not just complications for the kid, but complications for the mom. Like well, not postpartum depression because we're assuming the kid will be aborted, but if it's not, then postpartum depression, um, just tons and tons of stress, tearing in the vaginal lining, just tons of like things like that. So you're not just sacrificing your space and your like part of your body for the kid, but you're sacrificing your health after the fact too.
Oof. Okay, we have 5 minutes left.
If you want to make closing statements in a bit, we can.
Yeah, I'd say we just make closing statements, finish it up, wrap it up.
All right.
You want to make yours first? Try to make mine first, since you're
You can make yours.
closing statement. It is still immoral to functioning on the assumption of we're just going by like probably, or just yeah, we're going on probably. Then most children are born normally, even if it is by abortion. Most children are born, and the mother may not want it at first, but I'd say they kind of get over it, or not get over it, but they get used to it over time, and they kind of adjust to it. And it's kind of immoral to take away the chance of a embryo even before it's alive, but just taking away a chance to ever live based purely on the comfortability and feelings of its mother. There you go.
Bodily autonomy is a personal right for everyone, especially for people with a uterus and other women, where it's pretty undermined a lot of time in today's culture. It's not just a matter of comfort or feelings, it's a fundamental principle that all humans deserve. A massive cells shouldn't take over this right, and the consequences of overriding it for a fetus could be destructive to both parents and the kid. Um, think Fools Errand did a good job. Thanks to everyone for hosting the debate and coming.